My sister and her husband moved into my house after getting evicted, then demanded my daughter give up her wheelchair-accessible bedroom. I obviously refused. They left angry. Then returned with my sister Britney, 28 female, and her husband Dererick, 31 male, moved into my house 3 months ago after Dererick got laid off from his construction job. I am Becky, 34 female, and live with my partner Josh, 36 male, and my daughter Lily, 8 female, who has cerebral palsy and uses a wheelchair. Let me give you some background first. Britney and I grew up in different households after our parents divorced when I was 12. She lived with our mom while I stayed with our dad. We reconnected about 5 years ago when Lily was 3. Britney seemed genuinely interested in being part of our lives, and Lily adored her aunt. Derek always seemed nice enough, though he never said much during family gatherings. Their housing situation became desperate in February. Dererick lost his job right before Christmas, and they burned through their savings by January. They were renting a 2-bedroom apartment across town, but fell behind 3 months on rent. Britney called me crying one evening, saying they had received an eviction notice. She asked if they could stay with us temporarily while Derek looked for work. Josh and I talked about it that night. Our house has 3 bedrooms. We have the master bedroom. Lily has her room, which we modified for her wheelchair accessibility. And there is a small guest room that we use for storage and Josh's home office setup. The guest room has a twin bed and basic furniture, but it is cramped with Josh's desk and computer equipment. I told Britney they could stay, but explained our space limitations. The guest room was available, but Josh needed to keep his office set up since he works from home 2 days a week. I also mentioned that Lily's room was specially arranged for her needs and could not be changed. Britney agreed immediately and thanked me repeatedly. Derek nodded along when she told him about the arrangement. They moved in the following weekend with just their clothes and personal items. We helped them put most of their furniture in a storage unit that cost them $50 a month. The first week went smoothly. Britney helped with cooking, and Dererick started applying for jobs online using Josh's computer when he was not working. Lily enjoyed having her aunt around, and Britney read to her most evenings. Dererick mostly kept to himself, but was polite. Problems started during the second week. Britney began making comments about the guest room being too small for 2 adults. She mentioned that Dererick was having trouble sleeping because the bed was narrow and his feet hung off the end. I suggested they could look into getting an air mattress for extra space, but Britney just nodded without much enthusiasm. Then Britney started asking questions about Lily's room. She wanted to know why we gave such a big room to a child when adults needed more space. I explained that Lily's room needed to accommodate her wheelchair, her special bed with railings, her physical therapy equipment, and her chest of drawers that we had lowered for her to reach independently. The room looked spacious because we had to keep pathways clear for her wheelchair, but it was actually quite functional for her specific needs. Britney dropped the subject, but I noticed her looking into Lily's room whenever the door was open. She also started timing when Lily used the bathroom, which was the only fully accessible one in the house with grab bars and a roll-in shower that we had installed. 3 weeks into their stay, Britney approached me while I was making breakfast. She said Dererick was getting frustrated with their sleeping situation and it was affecting his job search. She suggested that maybe Lily could move into the guest room temporarily and they could use her room since it was larger. I told her that was not possible because the guest room was not wheelchair accessible, and Lily needed her specialized setup. Britney pressed the issue. She said Lily was small and would not need as much space as 2 adults. She also mentioned that Dererick's back was hurting from the small bed, and he had an interview coming up. I repeated that moving Lily was not an option, and suggested they could look into getting a larger air mattress or folding bed for their room. That evening, Dererick spoke to me directly for the first time about their living situation. He was more blunt than Britney had been. He said they were grateful for our help, but the current arrangement was not working. He asked why a kid needed such a big room when adults were cramped in a space meant for one person. I explained about Lily's accessibility needs again, but Dererick just shook his head. Dererick said he understood Lily had special needs, but she was just a child and children adapt easily. He suggested we could make the guest room work for her, and even offered to help move her equipment. I told him the guest room had stairs leading to it and was on the 2nd floor while Lily's room was on the main floor near the accessible bathroom. Dererick said they could carry her upstairs when needed. I ended the conversation there and told Josh about it later. Josh was surprised by Dererick's suggestions and agreed that moving Lily was completely out of the question. We decided to have a family meeting to clear the air and set boundaries. The meeting did not go well. Britney and Dererick sat across from Josh and me at our kitchen table. I started by saying we were happy to help them but needed to establish some ground rules about our living arrangement. Britney immediately interrupted and said they had been thinking the same thing. Dererick took over the conversation. He said they appreciated our generosity, but felt the current room assignment was unfair. He pointed out that they were contributing to groceries and helping with household chores while being squeezed into the smallest room. He said it made more sense for the adults to have the larger rooms and for Lily to take the guest room. Josh spoke up and explained that we had spent thousands of dollars making Lily's room accessible and safe for her. He described the specialized equipment and modifications that could not be easily moved. Dererick dismissed this and said kids were resilient and Lily would adjust to a new room. Britney added that they were not asking for our master bedroom just for a fair distribution of space. She said Lily spent most of her day in the living room anyway, so the size of her bedroom should not matter as much. She also mentioned that they were adults who needed privacy and space to decompress after stressful days of job hunting. I told them that Lily's room assignment was not negotiable. The room was designed specifically for her needs, and moving her would compromise her safety and independence. I offered to help them rearrange the guest room furniture to maximize space or look into other sleeping solutions. Dererick's tone changed. He said we were being unreasonable and putting a child's preferences over adult needs. He mentioned that they had been nothing but helpful and respectful since moving in. Britney nodded and said they felt like they were being treated as second-class citizens in our home. The conversation escalated when Dererick said that if we were going to be stubborn about room assignments, maybe we should consider letting them use our master bedroom, since it had the most space and an attached bathroom. Josh immediately said no and pointed out that we were already sharing our home and did not need to give up our own bedroom too. Britney started crying and said they felt unwelcome and like they were imposing. She mentioned that our mom had said we should be more accommodating to family in need. Dererick put his arm around Britney and said they might need to look for other options if we could not be more flexible. I told them they were welcome to stay as long as they respected our house rules and understood that some things were not open for negotiation. Dererick stood up and said they would think about whether this arrangement was working for anyone. Britney followed him upstairs without saying anything else. The next morning, Britney barely spoke to me. Dererick avoided eye contact completely. The atmosphere in the house became tense. They stopped helping with cooking, and Dererick spent most of his time out of the house supposedly job hunting. Britney stayed in their room or left to visit friends. This continued for another week. Lily started asking why her aunt was not reading to her anymore. Josh mentioned that Dererick had been using his computer at odd hours and leaving food crumbs on his desk. I tried to talk to Britney, but she gave short responses and said everything was fine. Last Sunday, things came to a head. I was helping Lily with her physical therapy exercises in the living room when Britney came downstairs. She watched us for a few minutes, then asked if she could talk to me privately. We went to the kitchen, while Josh continued working with Lily. Britney said she had been doing research online about children with disabilities and learned that many families make adjustments to accommodate everyone's needs. She said she found examples of kids with wheelchairs living in smaller spaces and suggested that maybe we were being overprotective of Lily. She offered to help modify the guest room to make it more accessible. I explained again that the guest room was upstairs and would require major renovations to be suitable for Lily. Britney said that seemed like an excuse and that we could install a stairlift or carry Lily when needed. She also suggested that Lily might benefit from learning to adapt to different environments. At that point, I lost my patience. I told Britney that she clearly did not understand Lily's needs despite living with us for over a month. I said that asking us to compromise our daughter's safety and independence for their comfort was selfish. Britney started crying again and said I was calling her a bad person for asking reasonable questions. Derek came downstairs during our argument and immediately took Britney's side. He said I had raised my voice at his wife and accused me of being defensive about criticism. He said they had tried to approach the situation diplomatically, but I was being unreasonable. He added that they were starting to question whether staying with us was worth the drama. I told them both that if they were unhappy with our accommodations, they were free to find other arrangements. Derek said maybe they would do exactly that and stormed back upstairs with Britney. They spent the rest of the day packing their belongings and making phone calls. That evening, Britney came to me and said they had decided to move in with Dererick's brother, who had a larger place and was more understanding of their situation. She said she hoped we could maintain our relationship despite this disagreement. Dererick loaded their car the next morning without saying goodbye to any of us. They have been gone for 2 weeks now. Britney has not returned my calls or texts. Our mom called yesterday and said Britney told her I chose my daughter over family and refused to compromise. Mom said she was disappointed in how I handled the situation and suggested I should have been more creative in finding solutions. Josh thinks I did the right thing, but I keep wondering if I could have handled this differently. Lily has asked about Britney several times and I am not sure what to tell her. I feel like I lost my sister over something that should have been straightforward. Was I wrong to refuse to move my disabled daughter out of her accessible room for my sister's comfort? Update 1. I did not expect the response my post received, but thank you to everyone who commented. Most of you confirmed what Josh had been telling me, that we did nothing wrong by protecting Lily's needs and accessibility. Some people asked for more details about what happened after Britney and Dererick left. I thought the drama was over, but I was wrong. Things got much more complicated, and I learned some information that changed how I view the entire situation. The day after my original post, Britney's friend Jessica, 26 female, contacted me through Facebook. Jessica and Britney have been close since college, and I had met her a few times at family gatherings. She said she needed to talk to me about something important regarding Britney and Dererick's living situation. We met for coffee that Saturday. Jessica seemed nervous and kept checking her phone. She told me that Britney had been staying at her apartment for 3 days after leaving our house, not at Dererick's brother's place like Britney had told me. Jessica said Britney had been crying constantly and seemed scared of something. According to Jessica, Dererick had become increasingly controlling over the past year. She said Britney had mentioned that Dererick made all their financial decisions and had access to all her accounts. Jessica also said that Dererick had been pressuring Britney to ask me for money, not just housing. Britney had apparently refused because she knew Josh and I were saving for Lily's future medical expenses. This was completely new information to me. Britney had never mentioned money problems beyond Dererick's job loss. Jessica said Britney was embarrassed about their financial situation, and Dererick had made her promise not to discuss it with family. Jessica believed Dererick had pushed Britney to ask for Lily's room because he wanted to establish dominance in our household and test how much control he could exert. Jessica also told me something that made my stomach drop. She said Dererick had made several inappropriate comments about Lily during the time they stayed with us. He had apparently told Britney that disabled children were a financial burden and suggested that we were wasting money on Lily's equipment and therapies. Jessica said Britney had defended Lily, but Dererick kept pushing the topic. I asked Jessica why she was telling me this now. She said Britney had confided in her 2 days ago that Dererick had found a new place for them to live, but it was with people Britney did not know, and she was afraid to go. Britney had asked Jessica if she could stay longer, but Jessica's lease only allowed for short-term guests. Jessica gave me Britney's new phone number because she had been forced to change it. Dererick had been monitoring her calls and texts. Jessica said Britney wanted to reach out to me, but was afraid I would reject her after how things ended. I called Britney that evening. She answered on the first ring and immediately started apologizing. She said she was sorry for how Dererick had behaved and admitted that she had been too scared to stand up to him while they were staying with us. Britney said Dererick had been pressuring her to get more from our family, and she had gone along with it to avoid arguments. Britney explained that Dererick had lost his job because he failed a drug test, not because of layoffs like they had told me. He had been using cocaine regularly and hiding it from Britney until recently. She found out about the drug use 2 weeks before they moved in with us, but Dererick convinced her not to tell anyone because it would hurt his job prospects. Britney also admitted that Dererick had never intended to respect our house rules. He had planned from the beginning to push for better accommodations and had coached Britney on what to say. She said he became angry when I refused to move Lily and started blaming Britney for not being persuasive enough. The conversation was difficult. Britney cried through most of it and kept apologizing. She said she realized how wrong their demands had been, but felt trapped because she had nowhere else to go. She explained that Dererick controlled their finances, and she had no access to money for her own place. I asked Britney where she was staying now. She said Dererick had found a house where they could rent a room from his drug dealer. Britney was terrified, but Dererick said it was temporary until he got back on his feet. She said the other people in the house made her uncomfortable, and she barely left their room. Britney begged me not to tell our mom about Dererick's drug use because she was ashamed. She also asked if there was any way she could come back to stay with us without Dererick. I told her I needed to talk to Josh and think about everything she had told me. Josh and I had a long discussion that night. He was sympathetic to Britney's situation, but worried about bringing more drama into our home. We were also concerned about Dererick's reaction if Britney left him and came back to us. Josh pointed out that Dererick knew where we lived and had already shown controlling behavior. I decided to research domestic abuse resources and learned that financial control and isolation were common tactics. Britney's situation fit many of the patterns described online. I realized that her behavior during their stay might have been influenced by Dererick's manipulation rather than her own desires. The next day, I called Britney back and offered to help her leave Dererick. I said she could stay with us temporarily while she figured out her next steps, but Dererick would not be welcome in our house under any circumstances. Britney was quiet for a long time, then said she needed to think about it. 3 days later, Britney called me from a police station. She said Dererick had become violent when she told him she was considering leaving. He had grabbed her arm and twisted it when she tried to pack some clothes. Britney had managed to get out of the house and called 911. Britney had a bruise on her arm and scratches on her face from the incident. The police took photos and helped her file a restraining order against Dererick. Britney asked if my offer to help was still open because she had nowhere else to go. Josh and I picked Britney up from the police station that evening. She had only the clothes she was wearing in her purse. Dererick had kept all their belongings, including Britney's identification and bank cards, at the house where they were staying. Britney has been with us for 5 days now. She is staying in the guest room and seems grateful for any accommodation. She spends time with Lily every evening and has apologized repeatedly for Dererick's behavior. Britney has also started looking for work and applied for assistance to get her identification replaced. The situation is not completely resolved. Dererick has been calling from different numbers trying to reach Britney. He showed up at our house once but left when Josh answered the door and mentioned the restraining order. Britney is working with a legal advocate to recover her belongings and access her bank accounts. I am still processing everything Britney told me about what really happened during their stay with us. I feel guilty that I did not recognize the signs that she was being controlled and manipulated. Britney says she tried to hint at problems but was too scared to be direct. Our mom still does not know the full story. Britney is not ready to tell her about Dererick's abuse or drug use. Mom continues to think that Josh and I were unreasonable about the room situation. Britney says she will explain everything to Mom when she feels stronger. Some people might wonder why I'm giving Britney another chance after how things went the first time. The truth is that she is my sister and I believe she was a victim of Dererick's manipulation. Her behavior makes more sense now that I understand what was really happening behind the scenes. Lily is happy to have her aunt back and does not seem to remember the tension from before. Britney reads to her every night and helps with her exercises. Josh is still cautious, but agrees that Britney deserves support to get away from Dererick. I am not sure what will happen next, but for now, Britney is safe, and that feels like the most important thing. Update 2. A lot has happened since my last update, and unfortunately not all of it has been positive. Britney's situation became more complicated, and I learned some disturbing information about my own family that has changed my perspective on everything. Britney had been staying with us for about 3 weeks and seemed to be making progress. She found a part-time job at a local grocery store and was working with advocates to get her life back on track. The restraining order against Dererick was still in effect, and he had not contacted her directly for over a week. Britney had also started therapy through a program for domestic violence survivors. She was learning about the manipulation tactics Dererick had used and beginning to understand how her behavior had been influenced by his control. She apologized to Josh and me several more times for the demands they had made about Lily's room. During this time, Britney was still hesitant to tell our mom about what really happened with Dererick. She was afraid Mom would blame her for not leaving sooner or judge her for staying with an abuser. I encouraged Britney to share the truth when she felt ready, but did not pressure her. The situation changed suddenly 3 weeks ago. Britney received a call from our mom saying that Dererick had contacted her directly. Dererick told Mom that Britney was lying about him being abusive and that she had actually cheated on him with Joshua. Dererick claimed this was why Britney wanted to stay at our house and why I was supporting her story. Mom called me immediately after talking to Dererick. She was upset and confused by his accusations. I tried to explain that Dererick was lying and manipulating the situation, but Mom said she needed to hear Britney's side of the story directly. Mom demanded that Britney call her that evening to clarify what was really happening. Britney was terrified when I told her about Dererick's call to Mom. She said this was exactly the kind of retaliation she had feared. Britney explained that Dererick had threatened to ruin her relationships with family if she ever left him. She had hoped the restraining order would prevent him from carrying out those threats. Britney did call Mom that night and told her everything about Dererick's drug use, financial control, and physical abuse. Mom's response was not what either of us expected. Instead of offering support, Mom questioned why Britney had not told the family sooner and suggested that Britney must have done something to provoke Dererick's behavior. Mom also said she found it suspicious that Britney had moved back in with us so quickly after the police incident. She wondered if Britney and I had planned the whole thing to get Dererick out of the picture. Mom mentioned that Dererick had sounded sincere and concerned about Britney when he called her. This conversation devastated Britney. She had finally worked up the courage to tell Mom the truth, and instead of receiving support, she was met with doubt and blame. Britney cried for hours after the call and said she regretted ever trusting our family with her situation. 2 days later, Mom showed up at our house unannounced. She said she wanted to see Britney in person and assess the situation for herself. Mom also brought our Aunt Carol, 52 female, who is Mom's sister and has always been involved in family drama. The visit was uncomfortable from the start. Mom and Carol sat in our living room and questioned Britney about her relationship with Dererick. They asked detailed questions about the abuse and wanted to know why Britney had not sought help sooner. Carol suggested that Britney might be exaggerating Dererick's behavior to gain sympathy. Mom also brought up the original conflict about Lily's room. She said Dererick had told her that Britney only asked for reasonable accommodations and that Josh and I had been inflexible and hostile. Mom said she was starting to think there was more to the story than what Britney had told her. At this point, Josh intervened and asked Mom and Carol to leave. He said they were re-traumatizing Britney and making unfair accusations. Mom said she had a right to understand what was happening with her daughter. Carol added that the family needed to stick together and work through problems instead of taking sides. Britney barely spoke during the entire visit. She answered direct questions, but otherwise stayed quiet. After Mom and Carol left, Britney said she felt like she was being interrogated by people who were supposed to support her. She wondered if she had made a mistake by telling them the truth about Dererick. The next week brought more unwelcome surprises. Britney received a call from Dererick's brother, Tony, 29 male, who said he wanted to help resolve the situation between Britney and Dererick. Tony claimed that Dererick was in rehab for his drug problem and wanted to make amends with Britney. Tony suggested that Britney should consider giving Dererick another chance since he was getting help. Britney told Tony she was not interested in reconciling with Dererick and that the restraining order was still in place. Tony became pushy and said Britney was being stubborn. He also mentioned that Dererick had told him about problems in Britney and Dererick's marriage that were not Dererick's fault. Tony implied that Britney had been difficult to live with and had contributed to Dererick's stress. I was present during part of this phone call and took the phone from Britney when Tony became aggressive. I told Tony that Britney did not want contact with Dererick or his family and that they needed to respect the restraining order. Tony said I was interfering in their marriage and threatened to call the police and report that Britney was being held against her will. Josh immediately called our lawyer who had helped Britney with the restraining order. The lawyer advised us to document all contact from Dererick's family and report any threats to the police. She also suggested that Britney might want to consider moving to a different location if the harassment continued. That weekend brought the most disturbing revelation of all. Britney received a call from Jessica, the friend who had first told me about Dererick's controlling behavior. Jessica said she had been contacted by her mom, who was asking questions about Britney's relationship with Dererick. Mom had apparently asked Jessica if she thought Britney was telling the truth about the abuse. Jessica was shocked that Mom was doubting Britney's story. She told Mom about specific incidents she had witnessed where Dererick had been controlling or inappropriate. Jessica also mentioned Dererick's comments about Lily being a financial burden. Mom's response was to suggest that Jessica might be biased because she was Britney's friend. What Jessica told me next made me physically sick. Mom had asked Jessica directly if she thought Britney and Josh were having an affair. Mom said Dererick's accusations seemed plausible because Britney had always been close to me and spent a lot of time at our house. Mom wondered if Britney had invented the abuse story to cover up infidelity. Jessica assured Mom that there was absolutely no truth to Dererick's accusations and that the suggestion was ridiculous. She told Mom that Britney loved Dererick despite his problems and had never expressed romantic interest in anyone else. Jessica said Mom seemed disappointed by this response and continued to ask leading questions about Britney's motives. When Britney heard about Mom's conversation with Jessica, she completely broke down. She said she could not believe that her own mother would entertain Dererick's lies over her daughter's word. Britney felt betrayed by the person who should have been her strongest supporter. Britney made a decision that surprised me. She said she could not continue to live in a situation where her own family doubted her, and she needed to start completely over somewhere else. Britney had been saving money from her job and had enough for a security deposit on a small apartment across town. Britney moved out of our house last week. She said she needed space from all the family drama and wanted to focus on healing without worrying about who believed her story. Britney thanked Josh and me for our support, but said she could not handle the stress of ongoing family conflict while trying to recover from her relationship with Dererick. I have not spoken to Mom since learning about her conversation with Jessica. I am disgusted that she would doubt Britney's abuse claims and entertain Dererick's manipulative lies. Josh says he is not surprised because Mom has always been drawn to drama and conspiracy theories. Britney texts me occasionally to let me know she is safe, but we have not seen each other since she moved out. She says her new apartment is small but peaceful and that she is continuing with therapy. Britney also got a second job and is working on becoming financially independent. Dererick violated the restraining order 2 weeks ago by showing up at Britney's workplace. Britney called the police and Dererick was arrested. He spent 3 days in jail before being released on bail. Dererick's court date for the restraining order violation is next month. Lily asks about Britney sometimes, but seems to understand that her aunt needed to move to her own place. I have not told Lily about the family drama or Dererick's accusations. Josh and I are trying to maintain normal routines while dealing with the stress of everything that has happened. I am disappointed in how my family handled Britney's situation. Instead of supporting an abuse victim, they chose to question her credibility and entertain the lies of her abuser. This experience has shown me sides of my mom and extended family that I did not know existed. Update 3. This will be my final update about Britney's situation and everything that happened with our family. The past 2 months have brought resolution to some issues while creating permanent changes in others. Britney's legal situation with Dererick was resolved last month. Dererick pleaded guilty to violating the restraining order and received 6 months of supervised probation along with mandatory anger management classes. He was also ordered to pay Britney's legal fees and stay away from her workplace and residence. Dererick's brother Tony continued trying to contact Britney for several weeks after Dererick's arrest. Tony sent messages through social media claiming that Dererick was a changed man and deserved forgiveness. Britney blocked Tony and all of Dererick's family members on all platforms. She also changed her phone number again to stop unwanted contact. Britney has been doing well in her own apartment. She was promoted to full-time at the grocery store and picked up weekend shifts at a coffee shop to increase her income. Britney also completed a computer skills course and is applying for office jobs that would pay better than retail work. Britney and I meet for lunch once a week now. She seems much calmer and more confident than she was during the chaos with Dererick and our family. Britney says therapy has helped her understand how she became trapped in an abusive relationship and given her tools to recognize manipulation tactics in the future. The situation with our mom reached a breaking point 6 weeks ago. Mom called me demanding to know why I was supporting Britney's lies about Dererick. She said she had spoken to Dererick again and he convinced her that Britney was mentally unstable and making up stories for attention. Mom suggested that Britney needed psychiatric help rather than encouragement to pursue legal action. I told Mom that I was done discussing the situation with her. I explained that her refusal to support Britney was harmful and that I would not listen to any more victim blaming or conspiracy theories. Mom said I was choosing Britney over family unity and that I would regret taking sides. Mom then made a comment that ended our relationship permanently. She said that if Britney was really being abused, she would have visible injuries and would have left Dererick immediately. Mom added that Britney was probably exaggerating normal relationship problems because she wanted attention and financial support from the family. I hung up on Mom and have not spoken to her since. Josh supported my decision completely and said Mom's comments were disgusting. We agreed that we would not expose Lily to that kind of toxic thinking about abuse victims. Our Aunt Carol tried to mediate between Mom and me a few weeks later. Carol called and said the family needed to come together and forgive each other for things said during a stressful time. She suggested that everyone was partially right and partially wrong about Britney's situation. I told Carol that there was no middle ground when it came to supporting abuse victims. Carol said I was being dramatic and that Dererick seemed like a nice young man who had made some mistakes. She mentioned that Dererick had been sober for 2 months and was working on improving himself. Carol also said that Britney should consider reconciling with Dererick if he continued making progress. She pointed out that marriage required forgiveness and that Britney had not tried hard enough to help Dererick with his problems. Carol suggested that Britney's decision to involve police and lawyers had escalated the situation unnecessarily. I ended that conversation quickly and told Carol not to contact me again about Britney or Dererick. I also warned Carol that if she tried to pressure Britney directly to reconcile with Dererick, I would report the harassment to Britney's lawyer. Britney learned about these conversations through Jessica, who was still being contacted by various family members seeking information. Britney was hurt but not surprised that Mom and Carol were taking Dererick's side. She said it confirmed her decision to distance herself from family members who could not support her. Britney decided to write a letter to Mom explaining exactly what Dererick had done during their relationship and the impact of Mom's response to her disclosure of abuse. Britney spent weeks working on the letter with her therapist to make sure it was clear and factual without being emotional or accusatory. Mom's response to Britney's letter was to forward it to Dererick. Mom told Dererick that Britney was still spreading lies about him and suggested that he might want to take legal action for defamation. Dererick used information from the letter to find Britney's new address and sent her flowers with an apology note. Britney called the police about Dererick contacting her again. The detective handling her case said Dererick had technically not violated the restraining order because he used a delivery service rather than approaching Britney directly. However, the detective warned Dererick that any further contact attempts could result in additional charges. Britney also learned that Mom had been sharing details about Britney's therapy and recovery process with other family members. Mom had apparently told several relatives that Britney was seeing a therapist because she was confused about what really happened in her relationship with Dererick. Mom suggested that therapy was helping Britney realize she had been mistaken about Dererick being abusive. This betrayal of Britney's privacy was the final straw for both of us. Britney decided to cut contact with Mom permanently and asked me to do the same. I agreed because Mom's behavior had become harmful and dangerous to Britney's safety and recovery. Josh and I have not spoken to Mom or any of her family members for over a month now. We told Mom's relatives that we would not discuss Britney's situation and that anyone who continued to support Dererick over an abuse victim was not welcome in our lives. Most of Mom's family chose Dererick's version of events over Britney's documented experience. Britney has built a new support system through her therapy group and co-workers. She is dating someone new who knows about her past with Dererick and has been respectful of her boundaries. Britney says, "This relationship feels completely different because there is no pressure or control involved. Lily understands that some family members will not be part of our lives anymore, but she does not know the specific reasons. We have maintained Britney's relationship with Lily because Britney has always been loving and appropriate with her niece. Lily enjoys their weekly visits, and Britney continues to help with Lily's physical therapy exercises. Britney's financial situation has stabilized, and she is planning to start community college classes next year. She wants to study business administration and eventually work in an office environment. Britney says having goals for the future helps her stay focused on moving forward rather than dwelling on what happened with Dererick. Dererick has apparently moved to another state with someone he met in his anger management class. Britney learned this through Tony, who contacted Jessica despite being blocked by Britney. Britney was relieved to know Dererick was geographically far away, but worried that he might be starting the same pattern with a new victim. The whole experience taught me that supporting abuse victims sometimes means losing relationships with people who choose not to believe them. I am sad that Britney lost the support of her mother during one of the most difficult times in her life. However, I am proud that Britney found the strength to leave an abusive relationship and rebuild her life despite facing doubt from people who should have protected her. Britney and I are closer now than we have ever been. She says that having someone believe her story and offer practical support made all the difference in her ability to escape Dererick and start over. I am grateful that we were able to provide that support even though it cost us relationships with other family members. Josh and I have learned a lot about domestic abuse through this experience. We volunteer now with a local organization that helps abuse victims find housing and legal resources. Britney sometimes speaks to new clients about her experience and the importance of having people who believe and support them. Our family looks different now than it did a year ago, but it feels healthier and more authentic. We choose to surround ourselves with people who share our values about treating others with respect and supporting victims of abuse. Britney's strength in leaving Dererick and rebuilding her life continues to inspire us every day. Now, let's move to the next story. Story 2. My sil secretly recorded my house and started a GoFundMe claiming she was moving in. When I found out the truth, my husband admitted he was part of her plan all along. I, 32 female, have been married to my husband Tyler, 34 male, for 5 years, together for 8. We both work in tech. I'm a software developer and he's a project manager at different companies. We bought our house 3 years ago in a nice suburb. It's probably bigger than we need. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, but we got a good deal and we're thinking about starting a family soon. My sister-in-law, Nancy, 38 female, lost her job 3 months ago. She was a mid-level manager at a retail chain that went bankrupt. She lives with her husband, Tom, 40 male, and their 2 kids, Jake, 8 male, and Emma, 6 female, about an hour away from us in the city. Some background on my relationship with Nancy. We were never close, but things were cordial. She made some comments at my wedding about Tyler marrying down since my parents are immigrants who work factory jobs while their family is old money. Tyler shut that down quickly and she apologized, claiming she was just stressed about being maid of honor. After that, we kept things surface level polite at family gatherings. Everything changed when Nancy lost her job. The first time she showed up unannounced, it was a Tuesday at 11 a.m. I was working from home and on a video call when the doorbell kept ringing. When I finally answered, she was standing there with both kids and 3 bags of laundry. She said their washing machine broke and could she please use ours. I felt awkward saying no with the kids right there, so I let them in. That visit lasted 6 hours. While the laundry ran, she set the kids up with their iPads in our living room and started wandering around the house, making comments like, "You really don't use this guest room much, do you? And this would make such a cute playroom." I was trying to work but kept having to mute myself during calls because of the noise. After that, Nancy started showing up 2 to 3 times a week, always unannounced, always with some excuse. Their internet was slow for the kids' homework. Their AC wasn't working well. She needed to get out of the house while job hunting. The visits got longer and longer. She'd arrive mid-morning and stay through dinner, even though I never invited her to stay that long. I started noticing things moved around in the house. She'd rearrange our kitchen cabinets to make more sense. She went through our pantry and put sticky notes on things saying expired or should donate. She even started bringing her own groceries and filling our fridge, saying she couldn't stand how empty it looked. The kids took over our guest room, leaving toys everywhere and drawing on the walls with markers. When I mentioned the damage to Nancy, she laughed it off, saying, "That's why you need to baby-proof. Good practice for when you have your own." I later overheard her telling the kids they could pick their own colors when we redid the room. I tried talking to Tyler multiple times. At first, gently, "Hey, maybe we should set some boundaries about visit times." Then, more directly, "Your sister is making me uncomfortable in my own home." But he always defended her. "She's family. She's going through a rough time. The kids love coming here. You're being too sensitive." Nancy started making more comments about their financial situation, how their rent was highway robbery, how Tom's salary barely covered basics, how the kids deserved a better environment. She'd sigh heavily, looking at our empty bedrooms, and talk about how wasteful it was for 2 people to have so much space. I started working from coffee shops on my WFH days just to avoid them. When I was home, Nancy would barge into my office without knocking, asking to borrow things, printer paper, stamps, even my laptop charger. She'd stand behind me looking at my screen, asking about my salary, and if my company was hiring. The final straw happened last week. I had an important client meeting, so I stayed home despite knowing Nancy was coming over. I was in my office with the door closed when I heard them upstairs. Our bedroom is up there, and it's always been an unspoken rule that guests don't go into private spaces. I went to check and found Nancy in our walk-in closet, taking photos and videos of everything. The kids were jumping on our bed and going through my jewelry box. When Nancy saw me, she quickly tried to hide her phone, but I caught a glimpse of the screen. She had been recording a video, narrating everything in our closet. I completely lost it. I demanded to know what she was doing in our private space and why she was recording. She got defensive, saying she was just showing Tom some organizing ideas and getting inspiration for their next place. When I pressed her about why she was narrating the video, she started crying and saying I was attacking her. I told her to get out immediately. She tried arguing, but I was done. I said I wasn't comfortable having someone in my house who thought it was okay to invade my privacy and secretly record my personal space. She started sobbing dramatically about how family helps family and blood is thicker than water. I called Tyler at work and told him what happened. He rushed home, but instead of backing me up, he defended her. He said I was overreacting, and she probably just wanted decorating ideas. That's when I snapped. I told them both to get out of my house. Nancy left with the kids crying and telling them Auntie doesn't want us anymore. Tyler stayed at his parents' house that night. Since then, his whole family has been attacking me. His mom called, saying I'm heartless for not supporting family in crisis. His dad texted that NY's just going through a rough time and needs understanding. Even Tom called to say, I'm tearing the family apart. Tyler came back the next day, saying I need to apologize to Nancy. He says I'm being paranoid and cruel to his sister when she's vulnerable. But my gut tells me there's more going on here than they're admitting. I don't trust her anymore, and I refuse to let someone violate my privacy like that. Ida, for putting my foot down. I feel like I'm going crazy with everyone defending this behavior. Edit. Thank you for all the support. To answer some common questions. Yes, I have cameras, but only outside the house. No, we never gave Nancy a key, but she knows the garage code. Yes, I've already changed it. Update 1 first. Thank you everyone for the support on my original post. Things have gotten much worse, and now I understand why Nancy was really recording our house. The day after I kicked them out, I started getting weird messages from people I didn't know on Facebook. They were asking things like, when is the move-in date, and are you still selling the master bedroom furniture? I ignored them at first, thinking they were scams. Then my neighbor Susan came over. She seemed hesitant, but said she needed to tell me something. She'd been in a local Facebook moms group with Nancy, who had been posting regular updates about her new home, our house. Susan showed me screenshots of NY's posts going back months. Nancy had been telling everyone that Tyler and I were moving abroad for work, and had agreed to let her family take over our house. She'd been posting those videos and photos she took, giving virtual tours, and asking for decorating advice. She'd even started a GoFundMe titled, Help Us Move Into Our Forever Home with photos of our house. I was still processing this when Tom's cousin reached out. He works at their apartment complex and warned me that Nancy and Tom had used my name as a reference when they got an eviction notice. They told their landlord they were voluntarily leaving because they were moving in with us. They'd shown the videos as proof they had somewhere to go. The real bomb dropped when I got a call from Tyler's parents' financial advisor. He was an old family friend and felt ethically obligated to warn me. Nancy and Tom had filed for bankruptcy last week. They're over $100,000 in debt from online gambling and shopping addiction. They'd been borrowing money from family members for months, claiming medical emergencies for the kids. When I confronted Tyler about all this, he broke down. He admitted he knew about their financial troubles back in January. Nancy had begged him to convince me to let them move in. She said they were about to lose their apartment and the kids would be homeless. Tyler knew I'd say no immediately, so he encouraged her visits, hoping I'd get used to having them around and eventually agree. That's why he always defended her behavior. He was part of the plan all along. He actually suggested she bring the kids more often because he thought it would soften me up. He knew about the Facebook posts and GoFundMe, but thought Nancy would take them down before I found out. I packed my bags that night and went to stay with my best friend Amy. I couldn't stand looking at Tyler knowing he'd been manipulating me for months. He keeps calling and texting, saying he was just trying to help his sister and didn't think it would get this out of hand. He claims he realized it was wrong, but didn't know how to stop it without everyone finding out. His parents are somehow even worse. They called yesterday saying I'm being selfish and immature by leaving. Apparently, Nancy and Tom are now staying with them and it's very crowded. They suggested we could work something out where NY's family takes the upstairs bedrooms and helps with bills once they get back on their feet. When I refused, his mom actually said, "Well, what did you think would happen when you bought such a big house? Of course, family will need to use the extra space sometimes." She implied I was showing my lack of class background by not understanding how family estates work. I've contacted a lawyer to discuss my options. The GoFundMe raised over $8,000 using photos of my house and false claims about my husband and me. Nancy's still telling people we promised them the house, and some distant relatives are apparently planning to help them move in next month. Tyler's now saying he'll do anything to fix this, but he still thinks I should consider letting them stay just until they find something else. He doesn't seem to understand that this isn't just about the house anymore. It's about months of lies and manipulation from my own husband. His family keeps trying to make me the villain, saying I'm heartless for not helping family in their time of need. They say I'm overreacting to a few white lies, Nancy told out of desperation. Tom's even tried claiming the gambling was a one-time mistake, and they've learned their lesson. But I found out they took out 3 new credit cards last week. They're still gambling and hiding it from Tyler's parents. They have no intention of addressing their real problems. They just want to band-aid it by moving in with us and probably bleeding us dry too. I've blocked everyone except Tyler, and my lawyer says not to delete any of NY's posts or messages as we might need them. I don't know if my marriage can survive this level of betrayal. Even if Nancy never moved in, how can I trust a husband who spent months secretly plotting with his sister to manipulate me? Edit. Several people asked why Tyler's so invested in helping Nancy. Apparently, he helped her hide a gambling problem from their parents in college by paying her debts. He thinks if he doesn't help her now, it's his fault if she relapses. I told him that's exactly why she keeps manipulating him. She knows he feels responsible. Update 2. Yesterday, I had a meeting with Nancy and Tom at my lawyer's office. We insisted on having it recorded since they're still telling people I promised them our house. What came out during this meeting was more disturbing than I imagined. When my lawyer presented evidence of their social media posts and the GoFundMe, Nancy initially tried to deny everything. She claimed her accounts were hacked or people had misunderstood her posts. But when we showed her the video she'd taken in our house, complete with her narrating things like, "This will be Jake's room once we move in and we'll replace this ugly furniture," she broke down. Nancy admitted she and Tom had been planning this move for over 8 months. Their gambling didn't cause their financial problems. Their financial problems caused them to start gambling, hoping for a big win to fix everything. When that didn't work, they deliberately ran up more debt and stopped paying rent. They thought if they could make themselves and the kids actually homeless, Tyler and I wouldn't have the heart to turn them away. The videos of our house weren't just for their landlord or the Facebook groups. Nancy had joined multiple home renovation and family living communities online where she posed as me. She told people she'd been getting advice on how to convert our home office into a classroom for homeschooling her kids. Tom finally cracked under questioning and revealed their debt is actually closer to $200,000. They've borrowed money from basically everyone in the family. Tyler's parents gave them $50,000 from their retirement fund, believing Jake needed emergency surgery. Tom's parents mortgaged their house to lend them $30,000 for what they claimed was a down payment on a new home. They even scammed Tyler's elderly grandmother out of her savings by claiming Emma had a rare illness. The most shocking part was learning about Tyler's involvement. When my lawyer asked why they thought this plan would work, Nancy smugly said, "Because Tyler promised it would." She showed us text messages going back over a year where Tyler had been advising her on how to handle me. He suggested bringing the kids over more, making comments about the empty rooms and slowly moving their things in, so I'd get used to them being around. There were messages where they discussed what would happen after they moved in. Tyler told Nancy they could wait a few months and then suggest I convert my home office to a playroom since I probably wouldn't want to work from home with the kids around anyway. They planned to gradually make me so uncomfortable in my own house that I'd start staying at my parents' place more often. The reason for Tyler's bizarre loyalty came out too. Back in college, Nancy had a gambling problem and stole money from their parents' business. Tyler helped her cover it up by taking out student loans to repay the money before anyone noticed. She's been using that secret to manipulate him ever since, threatening to tell their parents he helped her steal from them if he ever stopped supporting her. I filed for separation the same day. Tyler showed up at Amy's house that night, crying and claiming he could explain everything. He said he never thought Nancy would actually go through with moving in. He was just telling her what she wanted to hear to keep the peace. When I showed him the text about making me uncomfortable in my own home, he tried to say Nancy had manipulated those screenshots. His parents called too, but now they're singing a different tune. The truth about the emergency surgery money came out, and they're facing delayed retirement. They wanted to know if I could help them track where the money went since I work with computers. I blocked their number. Tom's parents are trying to force Nancy into gambling addiction treatment by threatening to press charges over the mortgage fraud. The kids are staying with them temporarily while everything gets sorted out. Jake apparently told his teacher about the new house they were moving to, which prompted a welfare check that got CPS involved. Tyler keeps swinging between begging for forgiveness and accusing me of abandoning his family when they need me. He actually suggested we could take out a home equity loan to help Nancy get back on her feet. When I refused, he said I was being cruel, making his parents lose their retirement over this when we could easily help. I've moved all my important documents to a safety deposit box and frozen my credit. My lawyer is drafting divorce papers, and we're documenting everything for potential legal action over the fraud. I feel like I'm watching a decade-long con finally fall apart, and I was just the latest target. Edit. To asking why I didn't notice the signs earlier, Tyler handled our finances since he had an MBA. I've learned an expensive lesson about financial independence in marriage. Update 3. The divorce was finalized last week. I thought I'd feel sad, but mostly I feel relieved. These past 6 months have revealed so much more about the family I married into. After my last update, I had my lawyer do a thorough investigation of our finances. What we found was staggering. Tyler hadn't just been helping Nancy. He'd been systematically draining our accounts for years. Over $100,000 from our joint savings had gone to Nancy and Tom in small transfers, carefully timed to avoid triggering any alerts. He'd even taken out a second mortgage on our house without my knowledge by forging my signature. Tyler's parents had to sell their house. The $50,000 they gave Nancy and Tom wasn't even the full extent of it. They'd also been paying their credit card bills for months, thinking it was for Jake's medical treatments. They're living in a small apartment now and had to go back to work despite being in their 70s. Tom's parents lost their house too. The $30,000 mortgage they took out snowballed when they discovered Nancy had opened credit cards in their names. They're staying with Tom's sister and talking about bankruptcy. Their retirement savings are completely gone. Nancy and Tom are facing criminal charges for fraud. The GoFundMe scam caught the attention of the FBI because they'd done similar fundraisers in 3 other states, always targeting different family members with fake medical emergencies. They're looking at serious prison time. The kids are with Tom's sister now. CPS got involved after investigating the welfare check from Jake's school. They found evidence of neglect. Nancy and Tom had been leaving them alone for days while gambling at casinos in neighboring states. Jake was actually the one who recorded some of those house tour videos, which broke my heart. Tyler finally admitted everything to our marriage counselor. He'd been covering for Nancy since they were teenagers. Their parents were strict about grades and behavior, so he'd help her hide things. Bad report cards, sneaking out, stealing money. It evolved into a lifelong pattern where he felt responsible for protecting her, even at the cost of his own relationships. The final straw came when I discovered Tyler had listed our house for sale behind my back. He was planning to sell it and use the money to pay off NY's debts, assuming I'd eventually understand it was for family. When I confronted him, he still tried to defend it, saying I was being selfish for not wanting to help his sister avoid prison. I sold the house myself instead. After paying off the secret second mortgage and setting aside money for legal fees, I had enough to buy a small condo in another state. I started a new job last month, and I'm slowly rebuilding my life. Tyler's family is still in denial. His mother sends weekly emails about how I destroyed their family by not standing by them in their time of need. She claims if I had just let Nancy and Tom move in, none of this would have happened. She doesn't understand that enabling them would have just prolonged the inevitable. Nancy still tells anyone who will listen that I promised them our house. She showed up at my office last month crying about how I stole her children's future. Security had to escort her out. The videos of our house are still circulating in certain Facebook groups with people commenting about how cruel I am for going back on my word. I've gone completely no contact with all of them. Changed my number, deleted social media, moved to a new city. Some mutual friends say I'm being harsh, that family should stick together. But I've learned that family isn't an excuse for fraud, manipulation, and theft. Tyler sent me one final email after the divorce was final. He said he realizes now that he sacrificed our marriage to enable his sister's addiction. Too little, too late. Some people won't change until they hit rock bottom, and I refuse to let them drag me down with